he has been so outspoken, no indication that he regrets attaching himself to the former president.
Right, and this is despite the fact that the former president, from our reporting, has rejected his efforts to, his pleas to help pay for some of his legal defense. It appears perhaps he might try to change that in the coming days. But you heard him today as he left his apartment building, almost speaking to an audience of one. And you see him there emerging. It appears he's trying to emerge from this car, surrounded by
cameras.
Let's listen in, because I think this is a rather chaotic situation, and let's see what's going on there.
If you want to hear from the mayor, please go to the spot that we all agreed on. We agreed to do it over there. Please, guys. Yeah. Please. We're not going to get out. We're not going to get out. Come on, I know you. Gary, get over there. Come on.
As we've been saying, the Giuliani is expected to make comments. That's the back door of the SUV. It appears they've made arrangements with reporters there. Evan Perez, you say the president, Giuliani, was speaking to an audience of one when he was saying, it's my right to be a lawyer. They're destroying my right to counsel. That was his comment this morning.
Right, and he pointed out that they're going at what he said was that they're going after all of the former president's attorneys, because John Eastman, of course, Sidney Powell, people who provided legal advice to the former president, the kind of advice.
Let's listen in.
Down here, Mr. Giuliani. Who paid for your jet down? I'm going to stand. Who paid for your jet down here, Mr. Giuliani? Comment. Do you regret attaching your name to the former president? Do I what? Do you regret attaching your name to the former president?
I am very, very honored to be involved in this case, because this case is a fight for our way of life. This indictment is a travesty. It's an attack on not just me, not just President Trump, not just the people in this indictment, some of whom I don't even know. This is an attack on the American people. If this could happen to me, who is probably the most prolific prosecutor, maybe in American history, and the most effective mayor for sure, it can happen to you.
How does it feel to be on the other side of the justice system? How does it feel to be on the other side of the justice system?
All right, don't interrupt me. I'm making a statement. If they can do this to me, they can do this to you. Remember, 3 years ago, the FBI raided my apartment and my law office, and they investigated me for 2.5 years. 20 years of my life they investigated, and they wrote a letter to the grand jury that they couldn't find a single crime. So that should have pretty much cleared me, huh, don't you think? Except for this ridiculous case in which I'm being prosecuted for defending an American citizen who I do as a lawyer, and 5 other lawyers are indicted. That should tell you right away that this is an assault on our Constitution. Fannie Willis will go down in American history as having conducted one of the worst attacks on the American Constitution ever when this case is dismissed. She has violated people's First Amendment right to advocate the government, to petition the government for grievances, like an election they believe was poorly conducted or falsely conducted. People have a right to believe that in America. Biden and the Biden state doesn't have a right to tell you what the truth is. And number two, and I will tell you, if you need to know what this is all about, the FBI stole my iCloud account. And you know when it stole it? The day that I began representing Donald Trump 3 years ago. They gave it back the day after I represented Donald Trump.
Mr. Mayor,
so for all that time, the federal government was spying on Donald Trump and his lawyer. I am being indicted because I'm a lawyer, as is professor and everyone else.
Mr. Mayor, last month,
Why do we
Mr. Mayor, you effectively...
Mayor, will you be here tomorrow?
Oh, by the way, you're wrong. I didn't do that. I entered into a stipulation for the purposes of that case to move on. It specifically says I do not in any way admit the truth of those allegations. Those allegations are totally false.
You did not. You still believe the election was rigged, Mr. Giuliani?
Absolutely wrong, and you're lying, as you often do. If you read it, it says it was only for the purposes of that case, and it was not an admission.
You had the opportunity. Still believe that the election was rigged.
Mr. Giuliani, do you still believe that the election was rigged? All right. Good job. Stay with him.
There was Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump's former personal lawyer, making his case for innocence, in effect saying, and his exact words were, people have a right to believe that. He's referring to a stolen election. Let's listen in. He might still be commenting.
We got it.
They took the whole thing. Huh? They took the whole thing and had the drone and looked right. They may take dial back
We have with us Norm Eisen, Evan Perez as well. He's making the case, in effect, Norm Eisen, that there's nothing wrong with believing, even if it wasn't true, that the election was stolen and therefore pursuing every, as he claims, legal outlet to contest the election. What's your response to that defense, as it were?
There are two problems with the defense that has been previewed here. The first is the evidentiary basis, and the second is the legal basis. On the evidentiary basis, it will be very difficult to persuade a jury that the 2020 election was stolen. A variety of courts and other authorities have definitively concluded it was not stolen.
Believed it. Whether it was true or not, they believed it.
And that brings us, Jim, to the legal insufficiency. Take this January 2nd call to Raffensperger, just find 11,780 votes. I may believe you owe me $11,780, but if I break into your house and help myself until proven guilty.
Can we just say this video, what you're looking at is Rudy Giuliani, and I believe is that Bernie Kerik with him, just to be clear, walking into a bail bond office? Is that what you call it?
Right,
A bail
the
bond
bondsman's office, correct.
Yes.
And that's the process by which they either put up the money to secure the bond that they've already signed, and they've promised that, you know, if for whatever reason Mr. Giuliani does not present himself for the proceedings, that he'll owe this money to the bondsman.
Second Chance Bail Bonds is the name of the place. This is the former president's former personal attorney, by the way, former mayor of New York City, former prosecutor himself, who sent many folks he prosecuted to bail bonds offices, bondsman offices like that in the past, and now he himself is walking through that door.
Exactly. The historic nature of this, the man who was perhaps the most well-known prosecutor, now having put so many people to surrender for arrest, to get bail bond, to be put on trial, to be indicted, now himself on the other side.
Question. Is Giuliani the only one who would need to go? Can we presume that the former president will need to get similar insurance, as it were?
We don't know how he's going to pay for the bond. He's allegedly a billionaire, so he can do that himself. But certainly from our understanding, he can and is expected to use a bondsman as well, because I mean it's a way for you to just put up minimal amount of money to make sure your continued freedom is still there. So
I do not expect we will be seeing him walk into a Second Chance or any other bail bondsman shop to deal with this. But to the point we were talking about, this idea of words versus actions, because we hear Rudy Giuliani making a point of saying this is a First Amendment issue, which we know very clearly it isn't. But I wonder who he's speaking to, because supporters, we know he's speaking to Donald Trump, but also supporters of Donald Trump. When you talk to a lot of them, they're not even necessarily aware of this fake elector scheme in the states. The information they are consuming doesn't mention it. They're insulated from knowing about it. So the actions part of it, they see the speeches before the riots on the Capitol. And that is really, I think, what informs them of what is happening. There are a lot of missing pieces for them that are not missing in these legal documents.
Well, it's two different courts. It's the court of public opinion, that's one thing. But this case is moving briskly. Mr. Giuliani is going to have to face a court of law, ultimately a jury of his peers. And these kinds of arguments, as a legal matter, the First Amendment argument, there is no First Amendment right to say words or take actions that constitute a crime. If I go to the bank, stick them up, and I get arrested, no, I can't claim a First Amendment defense. So it's shocking. It's hard to process the alleged illegality of what happened here, but at least the allegations are that it's not just contrary to the facts, but so contrary to the law to have fake electoral certificates, to tell the vice president he could walk into Congress and just recognize the losers' electoral certificates or suspend the whole procedure and send it back to friendly legislatures to adopt the electors of the loser. I mean, that's beyond, and that's why these legal defenses are unlikely to avail.
And we should note, while the former president and his attorney there attacked the whole proceedings, as they have all these proceedings as the movement, the work of the radical left, you have the former vice president, Republican, who said what the president at the time asked him to do was not legal or constitutional. And you have others involved, and many of the witnesses in this case are, as you were saying, Georgia state Republican officials, governor, election officials, and so on down
I
the
think
line.
one of the most important things is that as soon as early next week, we're going to get a test of this argument that they're making, which is that what they were doing, what Mark Meadows was doing, and what Rudy Giuliani and some of the others were doing was in the service of the former president and under his official duties. And as a result, they deserve for this case to be essentially moved away from the state court and brought to federal court. And then perhaps they'll take the second step, which is, we expect them, they'll take the second step, which is to say, you gotta dismiss this case. And so we'll see whether a federal judge, we'll get the first taking of the temperature, so to speak. I think Norm has, he has a very strong idea about where this will go. But look, I mean, these are valid, these are very strong arguments they're making. These are very good lawyers that they have, especially Mark Meadows. And so we anticipate that they're going to get a fair hearing from some very serious judges.
On the removal, Evan is right. What we'll get first is a kind of a dipping of a toe into the legal questions, because all that Meadows and the others have to show, and some of who have filed, David Schaefer, who was the Republican Party chair, claims he was an officer of the United States. I mean, come on. But Meadows has a more serious argument. Clark, a little worse, a serious argument. All they have to show is, was it under color? But as Evan says, it's an important test because these acts appear to have been so far beyond, they're alleged to have been so far beyond the what we call the outer perimeter of official duties, that it may not even meet that very, very forgiving test for an initial consideration.
If it does, it would be adjudicated in a federal court, but, as you've noted many times, under state law, and therefore would not allow for a presidential pardon. Or is that a question for the court?
No, it is a question, but that is probably clear. In a removal case, there's one up there in the Northern District of Georgia now. In a removal case, the substantive law of the state, all of these criminal statutes that are in the indictment, the substantive law of the state is applied by the court. The procedural law will be federal procedural law. But pardons in the Constitution, it says they're offenses against the United States. These are offenses against Georgia. So this, even if it goes to federal court, not pardonable. That doesn't mean people won't litigate it.
That's right, and they are. And I don't think we got this in because we've had so much going on here on both of these stories. But Fonnie Willis, the DA, as she was asked, because there was a deadline at 3 p.m. today, she had to respond to Mark Meadows on this. She told a federal court that it should not interfere in any efforts to arrest Mark Meadows should the former White House Chief of Staff fail to turn himself in by Friday's deadline. In a court filing, she called his request improper and baseless. She said the hardship facing the defendant is no different than any other criminal defendant charged with a crime, including his co-defendants, who have either already surrendered to Fulton County authorities, which is true, there's one who's arguing the same thing who's already surrendered, or have agreed to so surrender in the time allotted by the district.
Right, and that's key, right? Because Meadows is saying, I shouldn't even have to turn myself in. Judge, let me ignore the state court. And, you know, it's a very tough argument to make, especially because everybody else has turned themselves in. And, you know, Meadows can make his argument very reasonably after he's done that, but he's trying to forestall that. He's trying to push this judge to save him. If the indignity that you're seeing from Rudy Giuliani, and I get it, right? It is an indignity that you don't want to necessarily go through, but it is the thing that all of them
Is there a
are going to have to go through.
Is there a conservative, liberal, legal theory split on whether the state or federal court holds precedence here?
No, I don't think it's a conservative liberal division. Look, when I worked in the White House, I was a strong adherent of these laws because you do want federal officials to be protected, but there's also a long tradition in the Supreme Court of saying if you go outside the outer perimeter, if you're not under color of law, if it's not really an official act, and here the allegation is these are political acts when you call Brad Raffensperger just fined 11,780 votes. There's no constitutional duty to find votes in a state election. There, liberals and conservatives agree, if you color outside the lines, you're not protected.
And as you've noted many times, our system is run so that the states run those elections, right? And then you go to Congress. Well, quite a day here on CNN, and the day continues. Certainly legal developments in the courthouse and the jailhouse in Fulton County, but these remarkable developments overseas with the possible death of the man who just 2 months ago to the day challenged Putin in a way he'd never been challenged before.
That's right. Yevgeny Prigozhin, according to Russian state media, on that passenger list of a jet that crashed northwest of Moscow. Still details to be worked out here, but this comes amid a bit of a reckoning for Vladimir Putin's enemies, perceived and real following that coup 2 months ago to the day. And also, of course, watching what's happening in Fulton County, where we just saw Rudy Giuliani, the former president's former lawyer, booked on $150 bond. Extraordinary. Booked in jail and then off to a bail bondsman to secure that process, something the likes of which you just don't really see. To all of our guests, thank you so much.
The Lead with Jay Tapper, with much more news on all this, starts right now.